Hello everyone, this is Grey Merchant of Magic. Finally back with another Plane Art Inspirations video, this time on another of my favorite planes, Ixalan. Since it's been about 66 million years since my last video in this series, I'll start with a recap on what the series is about. Each video, we take a look at the flavor of a different bottom-up plane, and discuss its inspirations from history to myth to pop culture. This time we'll be exploring the plane of Ixalan. Why Ixalan, you ask? Because it has a manageable number of cards. And also because it's cool, I guess. But in all seriousness, I am a big fan of this plane. It was a massive step forward in terms of in-story representation for Magic. It was one of the first blocks that I ever encountered, and it just has a lot of cool things going for it. And I apologize in advance for the names that I'm definitely going to mispronounce in the next 15 or so minutes. This video will include Indigenous Central American, Spanish, and scientific terminology, respectively. And even though I actually have Central American heritage, I can't even pronounce a lot of English words correctly, so please bear with me. To begin, a brief overview of the plane of Ixalan. The plane is divided into two continents. The eastern continent of Torazone is named after its dominant nation, and represents the so-called Old World, especially Europe. The western continent of Ixalan is named after the plane, or vice versa, or neither. It's very unclear. It represents the so-called New World, especially Latin America. Ixalan block is set during the early days of these two continents' interactions, and takes inspiration from the real-world Age of Exploration, the period of global history from the 15th to 17th centuries during which various European powers navigated, invaded, and colonized the Americas. In fact, the Age of Exploration world served as a nickname for the plane before they decided on Ixalan. The concept of exploration is portrayed mechanically through both the Explorer mechanic and the double-faced cards themed around discovering a location. Coincidentally, Ixalan, which takes place primarily in the analog for the Americas, was developed at the same time as Conspiracy 2, which takes place on a plane inspired by European society in roughly the same time period. The two sets even competed on who would get to use the Monarch mechanic. With all that out of the way, let's start examining where the elements of the plane's four major factions come from. The Legion of Dusk. In the words of Ixalan storyline writer Alison Lurs, the vampiric Legion of Dusk, hailing from the country of Torazone, are a delightfully thin metaphor. They serve as stand-ins for European colonizers, especially, but not exclusively, the Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. As the Ixalan D&D tie-in says, the Legion feel that they have a right to claim new lands despite the presence of people already inhabiting those lands. The Iberian influence is clear, from their armor and fashion, naming conventions, and religious and political systems. The Legion are equally devoted to Crown and Church. Said church is a very thinly veiled allegory for Catholicism, dominant religion of the Spanish and Portuguese empires. The Church of Dusk's borrowing of Christian or Catholic imagery includes the usage of terms such as saint, bishop, martyr, apostle, and paladin. It also extends to rituals such as the veneration of saints and their relics, sacraments, practicing prayer by going down on bended knee and clasping the hands together, and burning incense in a censer. While in smoke form, the vampires are described as smelling like myrrh, which could be a reference to the substance's inclusion in the biblical New Testament and contemporary usage by some Christians. They worship in cathedrals, and their shapes are also stated by Lurs to intentionally resemble them in their design. Finally, like Christianity, the Church of Dusk's central beliefs are of sacrifice and redemption, with blood serving a sacred purpose. The figure they worship, Saint Linda, is portrayed by the narrative as a good and moral teacher, whose lessons are twisted and ignored by a subset of those who claim to follow her. She is perhaps intended to serve as a metaphor for Jesus Christ, as the real and fictional respective conquistadors committed atrocities in the name of their deities that the two deities clearly wouldn't condone. Additionally, like many of the European aristocrats of the past, religion is more of a political tool and a guiding belief system for certain members of the Legion, with the D&D tie-in stating many are politically ambitious, invoking Torazone's hierarchy when it serves their interests, but ignoring all the rules of church, state, and morality when those rules become a burden. The Church of Dusk also has a tendency to excommunicate people in regions for wholly political reasons. The rank of Viceroy was used by both the Spanish and Portuguese empires as well. Torazone's Queen Morada is likely inspired by Queen Isabella I of Spain. Many of the Legion's cards showcase the real-world brutality of the conquistadors, but Vona stands in for specific prominent European colonizers such as Cortez. Her title of Butcher of Magan calls back to a very long list of historical and recent figures who have been referred to as the Butcher of X. Encampment Keeper shows that the Legion uses Mastiffs, a dog breed with a long history in Europe, and several varieties that originated in Spain or Portugal. Relatedly, the Legion are shown introducing both cattle and horses to Ixalan, just as the Europeans did to the Americas. In the Unbowed trilogy of short stories, we see the Lunau region of Torazone. Torazone is a continent-spanning empire with various unique regions under its control. Lunao in particular is gratuitously French, with a lot of stereotypical French phrases utilized by its people. The fact that its local menagerie has lemurs could be a reference to Madagascar's status as a French colony from 1897 to 1958. The region also bears more general European elements. Lunao's upper class is described as sporting a variety of 18th century fashion trends such as bodices and bone-white wigs and makeup. A Latin influence exists as well, with a gladiatorial arena and the use of the term proletariat. Finally, the situation that Vivian sets up very much resembles a description of the Pamplona running of the bulls of Spain. A few other sources lead inspiration to various Legion elements and cards as well. Deathless Ancient shows a vampire being transported across the ocean while slumbering in a coffin, as Dracula was in his eponymous 1897 novel. Said novel also popularized the idea of vampires transforming into or manipulating fog. The Legion's rake of Hierophant comes from an ancient Greek cult and also appears in some tarot card decks. Sword point diplomacy may be a play on the phrase gunboat diplomacy, which originated in the 19th century. Next up, we have the Pirates of the Brazen Coalition, who take inspiration from a wide variety of historical and fictional tales and tropes. They are by far the most diverse faction in the block, both in terms of species and human ethnicities. This reflects how in our history, pirates existed all over the world, and racially diverse crews were not uncommon. They also have gender parity, and their most prominent leader, Admiral Beckett Brass, is a woman. This calls back to well-known historical female pirates, such as Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Coalition's members operate under the Pirate Code. Historically, pirate crews were known to have these agreements of conduct. Similarly, the concept of a pirate parlay, featured prominently in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, is mentioned.
She's invoked the right of parlay with Captain Barbossa.
Parody phrases like skullduggery, swashbuckle, and buccaneer are thrown around too. Canonical Firebrand features a pirate with burning gunpowder in his beard. The infamous Blackbeard was said to do the same thing with fuses in order to frighten his enemies. Angrath introduces himself as a dread pirate, referencing the 1973 novel The Princess Bride. Walk the plank references the famous trope of, well, making someone walk the plank. This method of execution was rarely documented in historical accounts, but is beloved by fictional ones. I have no idea why this guy is so red. Bad sunburn, maybe? Raider's Wake's flavor text is a play on the old pirate phrase, dead men tell no tales. Pitiless Plunderer shows a pirate biting down on a gold coin to check its authenticity, an old Hollywood cliche. Pro tip, if you ever get the chance, don't do this. It's not actually useful in determining authenticity, and you could devalue the artifact. Also, you shouldn't be putting strange coins in your mouth in the best of times, but you certainly shouldn't do it right now. Spectral Sailor, March of the Drowned, and Crumbling Necropolis reference the long history of pirate ghosts and skeletons in pop culture. Silent Gravestone and Grim Captain's Call allude to a Davy Jones-esque supernatural figure. Curious Obsession and Treasure Map show stereotypical X marks the spot pirate maps. The fact that the pirates' canon experts are monkey-like goblins is a play on the term powder monkey. Young men and boys chosen for their small size who are responsible for ferrying gunpowder to artillery during the Age of Sail. The related card, Makeshift Munitions, utilizes the abnormal ammo trope, also prominently used in Pirates of the Caribbean. Vraska's device, the Thaumatic Compass, may be inspired by Captain Jack's compass, being a compass of vague, mystical powers capable of tracking down magical MacGuffins. Thaumaturgy is the ability to work miracles. Captain's Hook is inspired by the character of Captain Hook, who originated in the 1904 play Peter Pan. Its card text references how Hook lost his hand to a crocodile, who then devoted itself to finishing him off. A few non-pirate sources are used as well. Sirens originate in Greek mythology. Like the sirens of old, those of Ixalan have entrancing voices and a tendency to mess with sailors. Ixalan sirens are unique in that multiple males of the species are shown. Ogres, European mythological creatures, are also mentioned as belonging to the Coalition. Orcs, as we know them, originated in the Lord of the Rings. The term Reaver comes from the Border Reavers, who raided along the Anglo-Scottish border from the 13th to 17th centuries. Vault of Catlacan references a trope made popular by Disney's Scrooge McDuck. Charging Monstrosaur depicts Arnold from the Magic School Bus. That's canon, you cannot prove otherwise. Hornswoggle may sound piratey, but the phrase was not used until well after the Golden Age of piracy. Similarly, Unfriendly Fire references a term first recorded in 1918. The pirate goblins of Ixalan are inspired by the capuchin monkey, found across Central and South America, and famed for their appearances in film and TV, including Pirates of the Caribbean. Mass Mutiny's flavor text references Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. The flavor text of Sailor of Means references a phrase that originated as the slogan of the New England Regional Chamber of Commerce. Exciting stuff, I know. Revel in Riches references how, before this gets deleted by Reddit. Next, the Merfolk of the River Heralds. They are primarily inspired by the Maya civilization of what is now southern Mexico and Central America. The similarities are clear in the fashion of the River Heralds. In particular, their head frills resemble traditional Mayan headdresses, and like the Maya, the Heralds utilize body modification. The Mayan civilization was divided into small kingdoms, or polities, Somewhat similarly, the Heralds live in groups called bands. The two peoples also share a love for jade, utilizing it in jewelry, weaponry, and figures. River Herald's Boon showcases a tree frog of a species found across former Mayan territory. Some of the Herald merfolk also resemble axolotl, amphibious creatures found very close to said territory. The Maya and the River Heralds did have some significant differences. War was not uncommon to the Maya, while the Heralds were more defensive and reactive in nature. Additionally, the Maya generally did not wear full heavy armor. Unlike the Heralds, who often dressed like full-on Mandalorians. Finally, the Herald bands were small nomadic groups of up to 12, while Mayan polities were more comparable to a city-state. Jace's Sentinel features a more European-style jade helmet. The Great River, from which the River Heralds take their name, is likely inspired by the Amazon River of South America, being a massive river with many tributaries and a great cultural significance to various indigenous peoples. Tishana's Wayfinder isn't based on anything, but the art really amuses me, so I wanted to talk about it. Look ahead! The Sun Empire faction is often referred to as the dinosaur faction. However, there are also various dinosaurs in Ixalan block with no connection to the Sun Empire. Since the line is blurry, I'm going to mostly talk about the human elements of the Sun Empire and save the dino discussion for the next section. According to Wizards, the Sun Empire is mostly inspired by the Aztecs, with some elements from the Inca as well. Once again, this influence is seen in their naming conventions, armor and dress, weapons, and architecture. The two civilizations also share similar political structures, with both being empires devised of various allied city-states, with the alliance's level of unity being varied, determined by numerous factors, such as the central leader's strength. Additionally, both cultures held poetry in very high regard. Tamales have been consumed across Mesoamerica for many thousands of years, including the Aztec Empire. The Sun Emperor is described as drinking Exocatl, a drink that was very important among Aztec nobility. Ashes of the Abhorrent depicts cremation, which the Aztecs were known to partake in. Gilded Centennial, Fire Shrine Keeper, and Pillar of Origins resemble Aztec artwork in their designs. The Inca laid inspiration to the Sun Empire's religious beliefs. Both peoples primarily worshipped a sun god who had 3 aspects and served as a patron of the civilization. Additionally, it's mentioned that a high priest of the Sun Empire once tried to replace the emperor. While no such struggle happened in real life, high priests were more powerful in the Incan hierarchy than the Aztec. The respective empires do have some major differences though. For example, the Sun Empire only recognizes 2 gods, and have an almost monotheistic view of their primary god, the threefold sun. In contrast, the Aztecs and the Inca both had large pantheons. The Sun Empire's evil bat god, Alcazatz, is clearly inspired by the Mayan bat god of the underworld, Camazotz. But unlike Alcazatz, Camazotz was not the primary evil being in a good-evil cosmic binary. Humans having been formed from clay is a staple in many belief systems from around the world, but the Aztec and Incan religions are not included. Other sources of inspiration exist as well. Oaxaca is clearly a representation of El Dorado, the mythical lost golden city of the Muisca people. The Sun Empire also took on some traits of modern-day Latin America, as the creative team worked with Wizards Latin American offices to ensure accurate representation. An example of this is how Watley is very close to her large extended family. Her metallic fans come from Asia. Path of Metal depicts a booby-trapped hallway, calling back to media such as Indiana Jones. Fountain of Ichor plays with the common misconception that oil is formed from the remains of dinosaurs. Gold-forged Garrison is maybe a nod to Hellboy 2 The Golden Army's titular automatons. Lastly, the official Planeshrift tie-in states that Alcazatz's temple is obviously inspired by a classic D&D adventure, The Hidden Shrine of Tamawa-chan. As promised, I want to talk about the wildlife of Ixalan, starting with the dinosaurs. And yes, I know that pterosaurs and plesiosaurs and the like weren't dinosaurs, but they are in Magic, so I'm going to call them that for simplicity's sake. Ixalan's dinosaurs take inspiration from, oh boy, wish me luck, Velociraptor, Oviraptor, Microraptor, Spinosaurus, Ceratopsidae, such as Triceratops, Ankylosaurus, sauropods such as Brontodon, Tyrannosaurus rex, Pterosaur, Dilophosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Pelagosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Stegosaurus, Dimetrodon, Plesiosaur, Allosaurus, and Hadrosaurus, respectively. That took 47 takes. All of Ixalan's dinosaurs are feathered, representing the most up-to-date view on dinosaur appearances. Carnage Tyrant, Trapjaw Tyrant, and the Regosaurs evoke the meaning behind Tyrannosaurus rex's name. Crazy Whiptail depicts a sauropod using their tail as a whip, which the real-life creatures may have been able to do. Star of Extinction takes inspiration from the KT event, in which a massive comet or asteroid likely killed off the dinosaurs. However, it should be noted that Star of Extinction depicts a comparatively minor event from Ixalan's past. Ripjaw Raptor, referring to raptors as clever, may be a nod to Jurassic Park.
Clever girl.
Cards like Strider Harness and Imperial Ceratops have a Dino Riders vibe to them, but it could be unintentional. New Horizons evokes movies such as The Land Before Time and Dinosaur, which end in dinosaurs finding a new paradise to live in. Spoiler alert for those children's movies that came out 20 and 32 years ago respectively. The creative team also took some liberties in their depiction of dinosaurs. Fro Deathspitter references Jurassic Park's fictitious depiction of the Dilophosaurus. Tusks appear exclusively on mammalian species. Tetzamach is by far the most out there of the Ixalan dinosaurs and is maybe based on a horned lizard. Finally, despite what pious interdiction shows, attempting to convert a dinosaur to your religion is actually very difficult. Ixalan has a variety of other interesting creatures too. A fish that Jace eats sounds like it's from the now extinct Plactodermy class of fish. Or maybe he's just looking at a picture of you. A molefolk references a dolphin in their metaphor, like inspired by the river dolphins of South America. I'll be honest, these things scare me more than any dinosaur ever could. Yeah. At one point, the Sun Emperor uses a local variant on the Wind Pigs Fly idiom, stating that Huatli would sooner find a flying panther in the lost city of Orizaka. Interestingly enough, Ixalan has griffins, which are pretty much flying panthers. Huatli did end up finding the lost city, so I guess the simile still works. Ixalan's griffins take visual cues from the macaws found across the Americas. Krakens are also mentioned as appearing on Ixalan. The Kraken originated in Scandinavian culture, but went on to become an important part of global sailor lore. Dryads originate in Greek mythology, but the concept of nature entities is pretty universal, including in the Americas. Ixalan's versions take inspiration from tropical birds in their visual design. Despite what Canal Monitor may suggest, monitor lizards are not native to the Americas. Both phoenixes and harpies hail from Greek mythology and are represented on Ixalan as owls, which are found across the Americas. Skittering Heartstopper depicts a giant ancient millipede, such as the Arthropleuria, though Arthropleuria was not known to be venomous. Shorekeeper is a trilobite, and its flavor text refers to it as a filter feeder, which some real trilobites were. Fleet Swallower resembles the stylized depiction of giant fish often seen on old maps, or alternatively, the biblical fish that ate Jonah. Feathered serpents are mythical creatures found across Mesoamerican cultures. The Chupacabra is a cryptid that was first reported in Puerto Rico in 1995, meaning that Magic the Gathering is actually more historic than this famous monster. Also, given that the Chupacabra is known to drain victims of blood, and its name literally translates to goat sucker, I argue that should be a vampire beast in its creature type. That's besides the point. To finish off, some miscellaneous cards and elements. Azur isn't from Ixalan, but from Vraska's conversation with him, we see that he exists as a metaphor for interventionism and imperialism, such as European colonization. Jace's initial situation resembles various tales of castaways, most notably Robinson Crusoe. Rousing Dagger references a form of divination that likely originated in Germany. Vraska's Scorn is a play on the original myth of Medusa, where a mirrored object had to be used to safely view her. Baffling End is spontaneous human combustion? That name is accurate because I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. I just don't get it. Is the victim a vampire who burned in the sunlight? Because Ixalan's vampires aren't weak to sunlight, and also, I think the silhouette suggests a human pirate. But why did the clothes burn away, but not the fabric on the sword? And why does the sword have a burn outline when it's still there? Did the dinosaur cause the situation? Or did the situation just get the dinosaur's attention? What are those two big indents? Where's the silhouette's other arm? Why don't you answer my calls, Mark Rosewater? What are you hiding? How deep does this go? I will come to Austria, Matthias Karros. I will find the truth. Don't think I won't. Hi everyone, after recording this, I received a very kindly worded and reasonable letter from the artist of this piece explaining what's happening in it. So I retract my earlier yells, unless Karros is just covering for the dinosaur. I don't care how deep this goes, I will find the truth. If you would like to support my international mission of vengeance to find out the truth that they're hiding from us, please consider liking and subscribing, and comment any inspirations that I missed, or any things I mispronounced. Yeah.